Welcome to another episode of the All Pop No Culture podcast. I'm your host this week, Kevin. I'm joined this week by Andrew, and then we also have his friend Sara from his time in Chicago join us. She's a bit of a Dune expert, and the Dune trailer dropped this week, so we talk about that really quick and get into some, a little get to know you with Sara. Also, she's a big Attack on Titan fan now, thanks to Andrew, so we covered that really quick before we let her go. And then the second half of the show, we do something a little different. We were just far too excited to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy to save it for the end. So we briefly talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. We try to stay really spoiler-free on this one. I think it's only been out for, a couple of days, and we don't want to ruin it for anybody. So we'll probably talk a little more in depth about the spoilery things next episode. And then I kind of go on a rant about the things that I've been watching. So I watched Bupkis, Citadel, Ghosted, Silo, and then I finally bring Andrew back in to talk about Fatal Attraction, which just dropped, which is a lot of fun. And then we finish it off talking about the Scream franchise, which I watched all of literally in like 2 days. So with that, thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Share us on whatever platforms you got. We're on the Facebooks, we're on the Instagrams, we're on the Twitters. If you're going to share, the easiest place to share from is Twitter or Facebook. I'll try to remember to put all our handles across the bottom there like I did last week. And with that, we hope you enjoy the episode. We have a guest this week, Sara, who is a friend of Andrew's from his time in Chicago, which is apparently where all the cool people he knows are from. None of them are in California. We all suck. But yeah, so we've got Sara on. She is one of the reasons that Andrew suggested bringing you on is because you're a Dune whiz kid, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But wanted to take a second and get to know you before we get going. So I'll let Andrew grill you since he knows you and can kind of ask some fun questions to get us going.
All right. Well, first of all, Sara, thank you so much for coming on the show. Again, we were talking about Dune, and you're the first person I thought of, but then there's also some other things that I think make you super interesting. So I guess we'll just start off with say hello and maybe talk a little bit about what your relationship is to pop culture. That is a very open-ended question, but I'd love to hear your take on that.
Sure. So yeah, I'm Sara. I lived in Chicago for 10 years. I'm from Wisconsin originally. I live in Colorado now. My relationship with pop culture is probably maybe a little bit complicated because it's like one of those things where, I don't like glitz and glam and falseness, but boy, howdy do I love movies. I don't know when I got obsessed with watching movies. I've always been like a bit of a movie buff. My favorite movie is Jaws, and I saw Jaws for the first time when I was like 6 years old. And when I saw it subsequent times, the older I got, the more I was like, okay, not only are sharks awesome, but the acting in that movie is just so amazing. Just every single character is so rich and so deep, and they can just not say many words and say a million words all at once. So I think starting off with something like that kind of got me obsessed with it. So I would probably say I'm more of a movie buff than I am a television buff. I kind of unplugged, when TV became so expensive, didn't want to pay for cable. So I really only watch shows probably that have been out for a while. So I don't really keep up on modern TV that much, but I still like to watch as many movies as possible, whether they come out, I'm looking forward to the Barbie movie, probably because I don't really understand what kind of movie it is. Like, it seems really funny, but potentially artsy. It could say some things. So I'm all over the spectrum when it comes to movie. Like, I loved Chris Farley comedies back in the day. Like, he's from Wisconsin, even though everyone in Chicago tries to claim him. Yeah, he's got famous in Chicago and Second City, but he's a Wisconsinite, so why don't you calm down? So I love all of that kind of humor, but then it's like the classic movies that I consider like Jaws, I like to read a lot, but I don't. It's one of those things that if I know a book is going to become a movie, I won't read the book if I haven't read it, because 9 times out of 10, the book is always so much better. So if I know what's going to happen, I'm like mad at the movie for like not including my favorite scene, or, representing a character differently than I imagined in my head. So I guess my relationship with pop culture is mostly stemming from movies and books, than with occasional, we briefly talked about Breaking Bad, when shows like that get so big that everyone sees them. Well, of course I'm going to see them. I like relating to people and I like talking to people. So that's how you do it, is usually that's your in. They're not going to do the big talk right away when they don't know you. So you can start off with like little talk, like, oh, I like watching this show. Have you seen it? Tell me your thoughts. So in conclusion, I guess my relationship with pop culture is a way to relate to people on a deeper level. So
Brilliant. Yeah, I actually refer to that as kind of like social currency. Literally, it's
yep.
like, and that's I just love that you said that. That is such a end type thing to say. I'd go there, like as far as like Myers-Briggs, because the idea of taking that abstract notion of like, oh, I'm just watching a TV show because like I enjoy it, but like the end's like, yeah, no, it's bigger than that. You can actually use it to literally give and receive an exchange, while also telling people about yourself and learning about them, but meeting on a certain wavelength or a certain frequency. So that's brilliant. You mentioned, of course, TV shows that like everyone watches. Like I know like a lot of people have, actually, I'm jumping around here. I have to say, kind of ADD-ish, I know that Lost is one of Kevin's favorite shows. I don't know if you've seen it. We have not finished. Yeah, I haven't seen it either, right?
I've never
Apparently,
seen
it
it. No.
ended very controversially.
Yep.
But there's a character by the name of John Locke, and not to like totally like blow up your spot on this podcast, but for obvious reasons, whenever I see that name, there's only like one other person I think of who might have a relationship with a name like that. I think it's pretty cool, but that was some random as fuck. Anyway, jumping right back to TV shows. Do you have any like favorite TV shows that are like your top three or?
The Wire.
Mm-hmm.
That's right off the bat. I absolutely loved The Wire when it came out. I have a tendency to, whatever I watch recently and really enjoy, oh, that's in my top 5, even if it might not be. So I can't not talk about Attack on Titan as a favorite, because, well, again, I can go on a character analysis for like 15-20 minutes without stopping to breathe, because it's so awesome.
Yeah,
so probably Attack on Titans would be in there. Golden Girls, love Golden Girls. I feel like I love that one because it spans throughout my like young teenage years when it was on TNT. So it was something me and my mom could watch together. And it's just like, it's light and frivolous and funny, but sometimes they go there. And I always, as a sitcom does. Mm-hmm. So I like that one. I guess I feel like I want to touch on the HBO shows, because I think they do TV so well. But The Wire was an HBO show.
Mm-hmm.
So that's only 3 shows. I should have come better prepared for this.
No, that's okay. Because I'm just throwing questions at you. And then I know, and you also mentioned that you lean more movies anyway. So
yeah.
So you mentioned Jaws. Any other movies that are like for you, just like
Fifth Element.
Fifth Element. Okay.
Probably my second favorite movie. Again, these changed depending on my mood, depending what I just recently saw.
So funny that Fifth Element is up there, because if she had played our D&D game, she would have caught all of the.
Oh, she would have killed it. Yeah,
all
dude.
The Fifth Element references that Pete threw in.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right.
God.
Yeah, we played a live game of D&D, and there was a point where it was embarrassing. Like literally, we had to cut out probably a good 20 minutes of the damn show.
I know, and I had to I had to stay in character, right? Like I knew the answers to these things, but I like had to stay in character for my character, so I couldn't just throw out the answer to him. But it was all Fifth Element. It was great. It was great.
Oh man, that would have been so much fun to play. I've never played role playing RPGs before,
Yes.
but I think I'd be really good at it. I went to college for like creative writing, so I have like that aspect, and plus just liking to read. So I feel like I can make connections maybe quicker than average, but like people like yourself, I feel like can make the same kind of connection so fast. But if you went down like a Fifth Element like theme, I would have caught on right away.
Oh
Because
yeah, you
again,
would
I've
have killed it.
I've probably seen that movie, Jesus, 20, 30 times
Oh yeah, you would have killed
at
it.
least. At least.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. Um, I have to throw something like Sandlot in there too for
Oh yeah.
nostalgia, and it's just like the perfect movie for a kid. And even as to rewatch it as an adult,
Oh
it's
yeah. Oh
still
yeah.
absolutely hilarious and so gripping. Um, I almost want to throw like an animated movie in there too. Um, maybe like a Disney Pixar. I uh, I mean, I feel like in my generation, Little Mermaid or no, Lion King would probably be the peak
Yeah.
cartoon. But it's like I like all genres. I like drama. I love sci-fi. I loved Ender's Game. Well, so I loved the book Ender's Game.
Yes.
The movie,
Yes.
the movie was okay. The movie was okay. Um, I would probably say Aliens
Yeah.
is one of my favorites.
Yep.
But that might also be um that was the popular one when I was allowed to watch scary movies. So
Hmm.
at that time, like I watched Alien and I was like, well, that's kind of cheesy. Ugh, when I was like a little kid. So the second one I liked a lot. But I also like really dumb movies. Like um I wouldn't call it a favorite, but Jason versus Freddy. I love it. I think it's absolutely hilarious. So I love ridiculous movies like that too. I like movies that don't take themselves seriously.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I'm trying to touch on like all the genres. They're not necessarily top movies, but all the genres that I like. But Jaws is still my absolute favorite, and Fifth Element would be a very close behind number two. But I almost feel like that one's a little ridiculous to be, Oscar winning and just like
Oh, but it's such a cultural touchstone. I mean, I think it was super like it just I think it's very I mean, I'm sure elements of that, influence people like a James Gunn or Taika Waititi in terms of just the kind of absurdity level, of the film. So I totally buy that. You mentioned sci-fi, and if I do this, so if you just remember something else that just pops up, just blurt it out. But you mentioned sci-fi, and one of the things that, of course, actually the thing that made me think of you for the show, was of course the new trailer, the full trailer for Dune Part 2 came out. And my relationship to Dune is I think I definitely am into it more than the average person. But I think Dune is one of those things where it's such a rich and deep lore that I would never enter a room and call myself an acolyte. Like I would do all the listening, right? But that said, and it's a little bit more about me, like I think I like the idea of being messianic and having powers and shit. So that's why, like Paul Atreides, that's some cool ass. I want to be Paul. Anyway, so I remember like watching the 84 film and like all that and like the sandworms and everything. And then learning the Fear poem, Fear's the Mind Killer, Little Death. I love all of that shit. And then seeing the new one and actually liking it. Okay, I'm just gonna blur for a little bit, but then go off on a tangent. The new movie, I didn't like the director. Is it Villeneuve or something? Dennis Villeneuve or whatever his name is.
Villanueva, yeah.
Villanova,
Villanueva, thank you.
Villeneuve,
Or yeah, anyway, Dennis. So Dennis made this movie, and it's like he was shitting all over Marvel. I already don't like you. You
right?
made Blade Runner 2049, whatever, and it was really long and like it was
Um,
cool, but like it was kind of boring. Um, but this movie, it was boring too, but it was gorgeously shot, in my opinion. And Oscar Isaac, frankly, my two favorite roles that he's done so far are actually Leto Atreides and then who he played in Ex Machina. Like I felt like those two
Oh yeah.
roles were my favorite for Oscar Isaac. Um, so yeah, I'm excited for this part two. I think part two is gonna be better than part one. So that's why I wanted to bring you on. So that said, I get the feeling that both you and Kevin have read at least one of the Dune books. So I guess maybe both of you give us your thoughts on the movie, the books. We're just freestyle, and I'm just here to listen and enjoy this social currency that is Dune for the next maybe 15 minutes or so.
I'll go first because I probably have less to say, and I'm definitely not as schooled in this. But I didn't read the book. I listened to it on audio. I do a lot of audio book reading
That's
because
reading.
I'm
That's reading.
yeah, I do it in the car when I'm going to the store because my grocery store is like 15, 20 minutes away. I can get in, a good chunk of a book just going back and forth. That is a long ass audiobook. So the the biggest problem with Dune, right, is that it is every single page is a mouthful. It's wordy, it's all this stuff. And part of it too is, especially with the book, he jumps into the story and the lore, and it's just kind of there, and then he builds around it, and there's like almost this feeling, this expectation that you already know what's going on, and there's all this terminology that he's just throwing at you, and so it's definitely,
And names. So
yeah,
many names.
yeah, it's just, oh, there's so much shit in that book. It's like the modern day War and Peace almost. Like there's just so much crap going on. And then so you get the movie, and yes, he shot it beautifully, but also it's boring in the fact that yes, he's got to set up all this world because you can't expect a film going audience that's going to pay to go see a movie that cost this much to make, right? Because they have to make their money back, right? So it has to be a blockbuster. You can't just start out with all of this lore and just expect people to pick it up. Like people are going to be like, no thanks, I'm done. And so my thing with the first one was always, it was a little style over substance. It's so pretty, there's so much going on. Yes, the directing is great, yes, the acting is great, but it's not a very exciting film. It's more interesting if you are familiar with the story already, because you're not learning as much as you're seeing the things that you already know happen. But I am interested in the second one. Like the second one will have more action, and I think that's a big driver. But this one didn't fail by any stretch. The first one, like it did really well. My complaint is always going to be with Dune that it probably should be a high budget mini series instead of a film. There's just so much
Yep.
that goes into it that even if you make both movies 3 hours long, 6 hours isn't really enough.
No. No.
And so I mean that's where my complaints are. It's not particularly exciting. It is beautiful. The acting is great. The things that they did well, they did really well. It's just I'm ready for the second one to be more interesting. The one thing that I laughed, I said in our chat, and I can't remember if there's an explanation for it, but why the fuck do sandworms travel everywhere underground unless somebody wants to ride them, and then they stay above the sand the entire time somebody's riding them?
That's a good question.
Because every time they go somewhere, they're always underground. Then they
I
pop up.
wonder if it has to do with, so when you ride them, you have those tools, right? And those, oh shoot. This does this give anything away?
They show them in one of the trailers, so I don't think you're too bad.
Okay. So they basically have these tools that they describe as like hook type things. And you put those tools, like you basically dig it into their skin or into their folds. So I wonder if you are hooked on them, if that somehow prevents them from like diving deep. Like in Jaws, to bring that back, they stick the shark with the barrels to keep them to the surface. So I wonder if those hooks don't do something to mess with their muscles or whatever to prevent them from actually sinking into the sand.
Yeah,
but that's just spitballing.
Yeah, it's fair, and it's something that they don't really have to explain. It's just funny to me that every time you see them,
that's funny because I've never even thought about that. Yeah, I've never even thought about that. That's wow. I feel
the other thing that I remember too about the first one that I just read like 2 weeks ago, maybe, that I thought was super impressive was that every scene that they have the thopters in, those helicopter plane looking things look kind of like those
Dragonfly.
were physically built. They were not CGI.
Wow.
Like those were actually built.
Oh, excuse
They
me.
didn't
I had no
fly,
idea.
but they were giant physical pieces of equipment that they made so that it would look more realistic.
Smart.
I
That's
found
rad.
that
I
to be
had no
very impressive.
idea.
Yeah. So,
Very cool.
but yeah, I mean, that's my
Um,
take on Dune. I'm curious for the second one. Like I said, I don't have anybody that's going to go with me to see it, so I'll probably wait until it drops on HBO or wherever. But I'll watch it as soon as it comes out. I may have to watch it in two chunks because it's long and slow, and hopefully, like I said, hopefully this one will have more action than the first one, and it
mhm.
should, and that'll be really helpful.
Yeah. I'm gonna try to be short-winded, but boy, howdy, I don't know if that's possible. So I got a tinge of anxiety when Andrew was like, "Yeah, Dune expert." Ugh. So I've read the first book 3 times, but that I haven't read any of the other ones. I have had the second one, Dune Messiah, for like 10 years, and I have not read it yet. I finally added it on audiobook, so I will pick it up. Um, but and I've seen the Sting version of Dune, but I only saw it semi recently, like probably in 2019, 2020, something like that. And boy, the whole time I was just like angry at what a trash job they did with it.
Wow.
Um, Part of it was probably just like the technological shortcomings, like they didn't have the crazy CGI. But I think the biggest sore spot for me was the acting was so corny. Like all of these characters are so deeply serious. Like Dune is a hella political movie, and everyone, like the guy from Twin Peaks, I don't
Yeah.
think he can do serious well. He
On the
does
clock.
schmunksy, he does schleptic, hey, he does that. But like being the main, ooh, I just none of it sat right with me. And Sting can't act his way out of a paper bag. So I was the whole time I was watching it, I was just angry
What
about
about
it.
Picard? Because I mean it was crazy seeing Patrick Stewart like in an early. I think he's Duncan Idaho. I think in that one.
Oh, I didn't even remember him. I'm sure he
Oh
did
yeah, he's
okay.
totally there because he has like the the kind of like
The
the
ridge and
hair like a
yeah,
yeah
yeah.
like so I remember seeing him like back in like I want this is like 91 when I think it's crazy to me how even when Picard showed up in like 88, 87, I was like, he's so old, right? But now,
He's the
now
same.
that I'm like my age and I look at him from those days, it's like, yeah, he had an older vibe, but he looks so young. His skin's so good. Like it's crazy to
Right?
me how your perspective changes. But yeah, I think that was his first like major like US based role. Was
Okay.
the 84 Dune. I'm sorry, I just jumped in there really quick.
No,
But
don't worry
I
about it.
can't imagine him acting badly. That's why I
No. Yep, yep. But it was made the sticking points were the Twin Peaks guy
And then
playing.
What about Sean Young? Was she cool in that? Probably don't remember her, but she was because she was also in Blade Runner around the same time period. I'm sorry, I'm just like peppering you with questions as he
I was
talked.
just gonna say I watched the 1984 version like one time and I was
Yeah,
just
fair.
pissed. I don't know. And then I've never seen because there was a show in like
Yes, on the Sci-Fi
late 90s
Network.
or early 2000s,
That
and I've
sounds
never
exactly
seen
right.
that before.
Yeah.
Never seen it before, so I can't speak to that. But when I found out Dune was going to be a movie again, I understood that this movie is so big. It's not you talked, Kevin, you touched on like world building, and it goes well beyond that because it is not world building, it is universe building. So it's like each planet has its own ecology, its own culture, its own, you know, everything that goes along with culture. And then you have the overarching politics with not only between planets and planets, but then there's the like royalty, right? The feuding families. And then on top of that, you have the emperor and all of the politics involved with this and like natural resources and everything. So it is absolute universe building. So I understand that this movie is super hard to make. So I still don't understand how it's only going to be 2 movies. That blows my mind. And once they started releasing like who their characters were, who the actors were that were going to be, I was a giddy little child. It was everyone who, when I was reading it on my own, it's like, oh yeah, I could definitely picture them for that role.
Good.
And so I had zero complaints about the casting, and I was really excited about it. So I feel like I went in a little blinded, because I was so excited and so giddy to see how it would turn out, because it looked so beautiful. So I knew that would take, and I love cinematography anyway, so I knew that would just take a lot of the focus and it would just be so pretty. But I thought the first movie did a really good job of telling the first half of the book. And like you said, Kevin, it stuck pretty well to source material without completely getting dragged down in the details. Because there is so much happening. There's so many like double crossings and so many like sinister things happening in the background, like within the families, within the royal families, before you even know they have beef with each other. So I think the first movie did a really good job of trying to build that universe. I didn't think it was boring, but again, I was like a giddy little child, just like, oh, this is so pretty, this is awesome. I was too excited to be bored. Oh, I feel like I'm a slight disadvantage at that. But I will say that I am worried about the execution of this second movie, because the first half of the book is what I consider a page turner, because they're throwing so many characters, they're throwing so many plot points, and there's like awesome action scenes in there too. And there's a lot of awesome action scenes in the second half, but the second half is when it gets super political. That's when you're finding out more of like the battles between the royal families and how the emperor is involved, and like there's so much like political aspects of it that, boy, if it's not done right, it could turn really confusing, really boring, or really muddled. So I feel like the second movie should actually be at least two movies. But Kevin, you hit it on the head. Like it should definitely be a high dollar, like a Lord of the Rings version of Dune should really be the best way to tell this story, because there's just so much to it. So I'm fingers are crossed, but then I watched the preview just this morning and I was like, oh, okay. Because there was a lot of the focus on riding the sandworm, and then I feel like they just kind of like, oh, and we're gonna include all of this, and the pacing was off, and I feel like that might kind of be a reoccurring theme in the second movie, is that the pacing might be a little off, and they're just going to try to throw so much in that moviegoers are going to leave like, what happened, who was involved, who are they related to, what? And that sucks. That kills like a huge blockbuster movie like this, is just pure confusion. And I feel like Dennis Villeneuve,
I think it's just I could be wrong
right,
though.
Villanueva. I feel like he's got a tendency to be a bit snobby and a little bit artsy for artsy sake. So he might, not stick the landing.
Yeah.
And I'm coming in with good faith, but the second half of the book is so dense that it's going to be real hard to make a movie out of that.
Well, damn.
Yeah.
All I know is that eventually Paul becomes like a sandworm himself and becomes a bit of like a god. I know that happens not in like the original book, but like down the line. So that shit's intriguing to me. Again, a little bit about Andrew's personality. Anyway, but I think that that's like really cool, and I already you really whet my appetite when it comes to Dune. So I think that was pretty cool. Unless there's more you wanted to talk about with Dune, I also wanted to ask you like two more things. And the first one was around, and we talked about it briefly, it might end up in another part of the show, is your relationship to like physicality, boxing. I just saw Creed 3 like maybe a month or two ago, which is
I want to
crazy
see
because
that.
now obviously not we're not going to go into it, but that whole situation like killed the movie as far as I'm concerned. I feel like now there's like almost no reason to want to see it anymore. We don't know if it's true or not, but just the question muddles the whole thing. Tragedy. But that said, like what was fuck it. So like did you watch the Rocky films, number one? Number two, did you see Million Dollar Baby? Number three, just talk about your love of, or not love of, just what are your experience with boxing, just freestyle,
Yeah.
how to, yeah.
So yes, I've seen the Rocky movies. My dad liked them growing up, but I always thought they were boring. So I was just like, oh yeah, this is on like again TNT, so whatever. Um, I saw Million Dollar Baby. I liked it a lot. That's actually a short story written by what's his name, T.S. Toole or something like that. So he was like an old cut man who can write. So he's actually got like that. Million Dollar Baby came from a book of his short stories, and I loved the stories. I love his
Brilliant.
writing because it's real short, it's real concise. But he shares my love of boxing, that even though it's so violent, it's so technical and so beautiful. Like there is a reason it's called the sweet science, because it's not, there are boxers who do brawl, and and you can tell when there's a brawling fighter because you have someone who's just trying to overpower the other person, and there's no like technical skills, there's no head movement, there's no trying to play defense. It's all just offense and trying to overpower. But like my favorite types of boxers are like Mexican style boxers. So you have really fast like power jabs and power combinations, and just like all about commanding ring space and machismo, and just like bah, 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 just like really quick rabbit punches, and then we're done. And then and it's all about, it's like chess, right? It's like a brutal version of chess. It's a lot of strategy, a lot of technicality is involved. So movies, I never like watched boxing movies growing up. I have seen most of the new Rocky or Creed movies. I have not seen the newest Creed. But Michael B. Jordan's in it, so hey. Um, but like my relationship with boxing, I mean, I grew up watching boxing. It was like, ESPN had Friday night fights, and Showtime, it was usually like Show Saturday. They had a bunch of fights and pay-per-views. And, when I was growing up, that was when like Mike Tyson was at his peak, right? So it's like heavyweight boxing was huge. So I was very caught up in that. I absolutely loved it. Um, so when I moved to where I lived, there wasn't, in Wisconsin, there just weren't that many boxing gyms that I knew of. So I was like, oh, I want to try it, but there was nothing, it wasn't like a fitness phase at that time, or a fitness craze at that time. So whenever like fight gyms became popular, and as boxing as a cardio became popular, I was like, okay, cool. Now I can actually try boxing, and did it just for fitness. And I was like, oh, this is fun. But it's like, I don't feel like I'm learning the things that I want to learn, the things that I enjoy watching. I'm not learning by just, sweating for 30 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever. So I went to a gym that was an MMA gym that also did boxing classes. So I just trained there for a while, got too big for my britches, and decided to sign up for Golden Gloves just so I could actually fight. But I didn't have any fights. Like I didn't even spar in practice before I fought in Golden Gloves for the first time, and I got my ass handed to me. Like this chick was in such great condition, and she just came out swinging. She was a super hard hitter. Did not have the conditioning for it, and I was just getting hit so many times in the face. I was like, wow, this sucks. But then I realized, like I don't know anything. I have to get way better if I want to do this again. So I just started training at, like, Chicago is so good for it. The parks department has a lot of, almost every single neighborhood has like a parks department boxing program, and it's always in the basement, and it's always like some asbestos gym. So I just went there, but you get so much more exposure to people. There's like young kids coming in that are like 6, 7 years old. And then you have like high school and college kids that are coming, and they're coming to train to fight. They actually
Wow.
are sparring.
Yeah.
So I just got more involved in it then. And, you know, it sounds brutal, but getting hit in the face when you have like headgear on and you're getting hit with boxing gloves, it's not as scary as you'd think. You do fight scary people that hit harder than others for sure, but it's not, if you can just, if it's in you to want to explore a fight sport, I don't think it's that much harder to just take it a step further and actually get hit in the face or kicked in the shin or whatever, wrestled to the ground or whatever. So yeah, I just fell in love with the physicality and the technicality of it. But I had to take a break after like a few fights after Golden Glove because it's an all encompassing sport. Like you can't just show up and train. It's
Right.
you have to if you don't do the time on doing your miles, running or swimming or whatever, you're not going to be a good fighter. So it's not only the time in the gym training your boxing specific skills, but then it's the cardio, and then it's the lifting, and then it's the diet, the pure
It's a lifestyle.
dieting. It is a lifestyle for sure. So eventually, it was easy to quit because it was all encompassing. But part of it too is like the better in shape I got and the better at boxing I got, I feel like the more aggressive I got as a person. Like I'm a happy-go-lucky person, you know, like I'm out at the bar, I'm dancing, you slam into me, it's all good. But at the peak of my conditioning, people would slam into me and be like, "You got something to say? You want to control yourself? Why don't you get away from?" So I was like, "You need to calm down." So I just took a break, and then a break for 3 months turned into years. So
Yeah, that's the thing about it is like as soon as you stop, like
you're at
getting
the
back
bottom.
into it is so hard that you're just like, because it's you talked about the conditioning of it, and there's fighters out there right now that will fight knowing that they are so fit, the person they're fighting, they can take a shot or whatever and just hold back until the other person just wears out and then just beat the living shit out of them. And when I was doing Muay Thai, I would go to the gym all the time, and I always partnered up with my friend because we always went. He's shorter than me, you know, a little more heavy set, so you know our weight was similar, but I was bigger. So when we do our training and stuff, we kick pads and hold pads and all that jazz. Never sparred, but it was cool. And you know, every now and then, what I like to do just to fuck with him is, you know, when I was kicking, I'd kick, and then I'd just let one out, just as hard as I could, just into his pads, right? Like I'm not kicking him; he's holding these big fat pads, and he'd just be like, "You son of a bitch," and like he gets so mad.
That hurt.
And then one time he didn't show up, and the coach was like, "Hey, partner with this guy," and this dude he partnered me with was like just a fucking human monstrosity. He was like Dave Batista size. And I just remember holding pads, and this guy is just like, and I'm 6'2", and at the time I was probably 220 pounds, right? Like I'm not small, and this dude is just like kicking me, and I'm just like physically moving from one point to another when this guy's kicking me, and I was like, Jesus fucking Christ, because this guy had actually fought. And I was like, that was not cool. I told my buddy, I was like, you cannot miss again. I was like, it's not okay.
You need to communicate with me if you
Yeah,
don't show
yeah.
up.
It's like, if you're not going to show up, I'm not going to show up because I don't want to die. But because I was bigger than most people, of course, I got paired with a big dude that needed somebody to partner with. And I was like, man, I looked at him. I was like, I'm not going to tell you to calm down because you can kill me, but maybe calm down so you don't kill me. I was like, you're a big fucking dude.
Right.
And like it's a wild sport. Like even if you just go to straight up stand up boxing, there's a whole magic to it that is impressive. I think one of my favorite boxing clips is when Muhammad Ali's stuck in the corner and he literally dodges 20 punches in a row, just completely untouched.
All head work.
Yeah, and backed into a corner, and just you watch it and you're like, dude, that's not possible. Like he must be able to see the future. Like he's a superhuman at the time, and it's ridiculous. And in the moments that he's not getting punched out, he's laughing at the dude. Like So, and then that's
Ouch.
something, and that's something that is huge in combat sports. If you can get in the other person's head, if you can look at them and throw them off in any way, you're halfway to winning.
Yep.
It's
And that's
crazy.
what
It's
I
crazy.
meant about like the machismo of it, because it's
Yeah.
so much of it is like controlling the ring space, right? Like one of the things they're judged on is general ringmanship. So if you can get somebody to move the direction you want them to move, which is normally their weak side, throws off their balance, throws off that rhythm, you control them. You control them. So that's man, boxing.
Fascinating.
I feel like not as many people watch boxing as there might be more people who appreciate boxing than folks that actually watch it, just because it is so violent and that's what people see. But what they don't see is that technicality. It is just that ringmanship. So yeah, it's a bummer. I'm sorry you had that experience. I'll say like the bonus of coming up from the Chicago rec department boxing is you have anyone from a brand new fighter to someone who's been fighting for like 20, 30 years. So even those really experienced fighters, when you're sparring with each other, the more experienced fighter knows.
Yeah.
So they're not easy on you, but they're not gonna give you their full strength. You know, they're gonna hit you when you leave yourself open, but they're not gonna just brawl.
Yeah.
So
well,
I feel like
I honestly think this dude was so big that he was holding back, and he was still transporting me into another fucking zip code. Like
that's fair. That
he was
happens
just-
too.
He was just fucking. He was a monster. Absolute nice guy. Like nice guy. Like he was
Usually is.
super polite and like, and that's the thing too. And that is true. Is that like so many boxers and so many fighters, like
Soft spoken.
are pretty chill. Would you say pot smoking?
No.
Because actually,
No,
yes,
definitely not. What did I say? I don't remember.
But yeah, it's a crazy world, and it's. I think I learned so much more, or gained so much more appreciation for the sport, just doing it, even just for the exercise bit of it, right? Like I wasn't doing it to ever compete, but like I learned so much about it that now, when I watch a sport that I had never watched before, like I understand the movement of it, the dance of it, the things that are coming and things like that. And I think when you understand a sport like that, it makes a huge difference. Like I grew up on baseball, right? My sport was baseball, so I can watch a baseball game, which it's boring for a lot of people, but because I think about it in, a strategic way, right? Like I think about baseball and all the things that somebody's doing. It's more entertaining for me, and so when I got that for Muay Thai, it made it a very interesting sport to watch.
Yeah, that's crazy that you just decided to try Muay Thai just because a buddy did it. Like, man, what an intense sport that a buddy would just be like, "Yeah, why don't you come to the gym with me?" I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was not aware this was like a head to toe battle zone, but cool.
Right.
Let's do it. Let's sweat. Let's sweat for an hour.
Well, that's why they call Muay Thai the 8 limbs, right? And Muay Thai is 8 limbs. So you've got both hands, both feet, and then you have elbows and knees.
I was just gonna say elbows.
Yeah. And elbows those are the things you avoid at all costs. Elbows will mess you up.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are the things that let blood. Like if somebody lands an elbow, like coming down on an elbow, it'll split your forehead and just brutal.
When MMA was at its peak, like in the early 2000s, well, what I would consider its peak, there was, I think it was a spinoff in Japan, I want to say, that was basically MMA, but there weren't as many rules. So I still remember, I don't even remember the names of the fighter, but like this one fighter was probably like 6'5", 6'7", cut to the core. He had this guy like completely dominated on the ground. He was like in the fetal position, trying to like block all of his organs. This guy was doing handstands, like from his elbows, doing handstands and just slamming his knee into this guy's like neck. I'm like, how is this legal? But whatever that sport was called, it was no holds bar. I was like, this is not fun. This is brutal. This is wow.
Yeah.
So it's funny, you were saying a couple of things. So I'll just like I debated sharing this in front of the world because now you're gonna know my weaknesses, but F it. So I look at human physiology, right? So I do not have deep set eyes. Okay. My brow ridge is not prominent, which basically means that my eyes actually project further than anywhere else in my face. So you hit me in the eye, eyeball is gone,
Well,
right? Whereas other people I see like especially see these big like big dudes whatever like their eyes are in like everything over the socket bone is around the eye and the eyes recessed, so that's why you can get a I can't get a black eye. I'll get a smashed eyeball first before I get any bruising around here.
ugh.
So for me it's like that's why getting hit in the face, I'm gonna learn to talk. I'm a peacemaker. I'll goons, but I'm not gonna do any fighting of my own. I'm like Cobra retreat anyway. So that said, but I appreciate it when you say, yeah, getting hit in the face, man. It's like fucking cool. It's not that
Not
bad.
that big of a deal.
Yeah, and it's like for me, it's like, okay, if I had more recessed eyes, then I'd probably be down for that shit. But I'm also not a big fan of headaches. And I imagine that when you get hit in the head all the time, you're probably getting that headache situation going on. So I guess talk to me, both of you guys now. What is your relationship to pain? Some people like pain. So like I'm just curious. Like what's up with that?
I'm old now, so I'm not a fan anymore. Like
Everything hurts.
yeah, I'm in pain all day, every day. I played catch with my son again. I still can't put my wedding ring on because he
Right.
jacked up this finger, and then I caught a ball head on this finger just in the air, and now this finger hurts. I'm fucking old, dude. I'm just throwing a football. So like, I'm not a fan of pain. But when I was training for Muay Thai, I was never really ended up in pain, and if I did, it was because I screwed something up. It wasn't because somebody hurt me. Um, and so, I mean, I understand that like when you're new to the sport and you go in and do the lowest levels of the fighting, you get equipment that protects you. So you get the padded helmet, right? So you can take shots to the head that are not as impactful as when you go into the ring and you take those same shots to your head with
Yep.
with nothing. Um, and funny enough, the place it's not getting hit up here that hurts you, it's getting hit right here. You get hit in the jaw, you're done. Like you're out.
Or the kidneys. Or
Yes.
the kidneys.
Mm-hmm.
That'll make you just crumble. And it doesn't even have to be a super hard shot. It can just be a quick bop, and it's like, it's
Yep.
awful.
Yeah.
It's
And then
awful.
and when you take Muay Thai into account, all the kicking, they kick you right above your knee joint. So where all that muscle is, where your quads are, the idea is that you keep hitting that every time you can because it weakens it, like it breaks it down. And then that person doesn't have the strength and the balance from that leg anymore. And then they can't push and they can't drive and they can't kick. So I don't want to do that because I don't want to hurt. But I understand like the whole point of these sports when they're at their peak is to fucking hurt somebody. Like,
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah,
I'd say, like, sorry.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
My relationship with pain is probably like dichotomous, really. Because I don't like pain. I think it sucks. I'm a big baby. I stub my toe and I'm like, ah, it hurts so bad. But something like boxing, I think part of it is adrenaline. I have a very good relationship with adrenaline. That adrenaline is my homie. So I feel like, and then it's like I had a bunch of piercings back in the day. I have a lot of tattoos. So I don't like, physical pain, like twisting my ankle or whatever. But even getting tattooed, it sucks. I sweat. I'm like, oh, is this over? It hurts so bad. And it's not like some people are like, oh yeah, I deserve this or whatever is going on in there. But like some people like the pain or deal with the pain. I don't. I'm just like, this sucks. I like the end result,
Exactly.
but the process is awful. I will try to avoid pain at all costs, but it's adrenaline that is a surly little bitch that will just a little bit. You get a little addicted. You want a little more, and that's what I like.
That's funny that you bring up tattoos because tattoos, they don't that pain doesn't bother me. Like I feel it. I haven't had, I haven't had a back tattoo, and I haven't had one like on my ribs or on my foot or ankle, but I've got one on my forearm, one on each, upper arm, and I always likened it to if somebody took a ballpoint pen and just wrote on you too hard, like that is how it has always felt for me. So I'm good with pain, but less good now than I used to be. Right now I'm old. Like everything fucking hurts. Like I
Yep.
basically I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have a couple Advil with my breakfast every day for the rest of my life now because I'm falling apart.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. Like pain isn't always a bad thing. Not always a good
Sure.
thing, but it's not always a bad thing.
So the reason why I ask actually is, and I have two questions in my head. I'm going to go with the first one, but then just over the second one really quick. For me, and I have a statement. So pain for me is pain with purpose. Like as long as there's purpose to the pain, I can deal with it. And I think the last thing I wanted to talk about with you, Attack on Titan, is there's a lot of pain with purpose in that. As a matter of fact, if I was a Titan shifter, I have to get I have to hurt myself to turn into a Titan. So that's pain with purpose. And but before I jump into that part, going back just really quickly, like what I think you already answered the question, but I'm just curious, like at what age did you actually say, I want to actually be in the ring and be a fighter? Was it like from childhood or was it like at some
No,
point during? Yeah, I'm just curious.
that's a good question. Um, so when I started watching boxing pretty religiously, I wanted to try it right away. But I definitely didn't think about the pain aspect of it. I was just like, that looks awesome. I want to do it. I think it was like more of like the badassness of it. Like, oh yeah, I want to be that person. Um, but then, God, the older you get, the more complicated your relationship with pain is. I think when I started going, it was just cardio because that's all that was available at the time. And I think just once I started training, I was like, yeah, it's cool, but I want to, the point of this to me, it felt like exercise for the sake of exercise, where I like to have an end game. Like, I don't like exercising for the sake of exercising. I want it to be for a reason. So why am I sweating for 60 minutes to just sweat? That's dumb. I don't like this. So the actual reason to fight is the reason. So I think it's like when I first started cardio boxing and it wasn't enough, there needed to be a purpose for it. So, I mean, probably in my mid 20s when I
That's
started
awesome.
training is when I was like, no, this, I need to do it for a reason and I need to actually play this sport and not just train for it.
So I remember being probably 6 or 7 years old, and in Canada there was English and French. And I remember seeing Rocky on our French channel, so I didn't understand anything. What I do remember though was that was the first time I'd ever seen a fucked up face at like 6. So at the end of the first Rocky, I had no idea what was going on. I'm just like, is he an alien? Like his eyes are all closed, it's all fucked
Yeah.
up. And then yes, and then I was traumatized as a kid. I was like, who would do this to himself? Like, yeah, when Dad was watching Wild World of Sports on ABC or whatever, they never looked that fucked up. So I was just like, so yeah, that's my early imprint. For me, like boxing, I'm good, you know. But then of course the Rocky movies glorified it. But I just thought it was interesting how your early thing was that was cool. My earliest exposure was that's how you get
No,
your
thank
face fucked up. Um, but yeah, so I guess to transition though, like again, and we make this pretty quick or not or whatever. But like again, you actually like indulged me. You are actually of all the people. Actually, there's 2 people that I know now, 3, I guess, but like who've watched Attack on Titan have actually absorbed it to the point where you can actually kind of like school me, and that to me is crazy but awesome. I mean, it's more than I could ever ask for. It's so awesome. And as far as Pain with Purpose goes, I'm just like, I don't care. It's a spoiler. There at one point when you see the lengths that Aaron goes through to actually go behind enemy lines and saw off his own fucking leg and like jab his eye while biting on that thing, I'm like, that's his superpower. His superpower is his will.
pain tolerance. Yeah.
Vein tolerance and will. Like, but it's yeah, that too, right? But like his will. But to me, it's like that's I like to think I have a strong will. So it's like, even though I really, really fucking hate pain, like if I know it's for a purpose and I can heal, I will absolutely I'll do it. I will fucking do it. I don't give a fuck. But if I know I can't heal and there's no point to it, then it's not happening.
Nothing.
Sorry, dude. No. So anyway, like, I don't know, like, just maybe I'm gonna always talk about Attack on Titan, so maybe wax poetic a little bit about it, and then I will stop keeping you up on a Saturday night.
On a Saturday night. Yeah, I can't really wax poetic about Aaron because he's not
Yes,
my favorite
I know.
character.
I know.
I appreciate his complicated nature, but he is not that inherently. All right, so Kevin, just in case you don't know,
Oh, he knows.
you've
Yeah.
seen
Oh yeah, yeah.
Attack on Titan, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so just in case you don't know, my favorite character is Levi. He is the best character. You can't argue that away from me. That's something I went on a 15-minute dissertation about. But the reason I like Levi so much is because despite all of the violence he's commit and his, violent skills, he still has a very consistent moral compass. He always he always makes the right decision for the greater good, not for himself. It's for the people, really. And Aaron is just, man, I consider him a little evil. He's evil.
Yeah.
He's got, he even, I don't want to give spoilers, so I don't really want to divulge too much, but I think he transitioned from like a whiny, wispy kid to just this violent, death hungry monster.
So
And it's, man, I can't mess with characters that just commit evil atrocities for, he just mass genocide, and he just like completely just dove into that. He's like, yep, that's the only problem. They're gonna kill us. We're gonna kill everybody on this planet. It's like, that's the conclusion you drew. That's where your brain went. All right, you're messed up, dude. You're messed up, and I can't like a character like that.
The only argument I can make for Aaron is that he went from a kid that didn't that wanted to, fight and be whatever, to having everything somehow on his shoulders. Like, there was some crazy shit dumped on this poor kid, right? Like,
yeah, but did he like cause some of those problems?
Part of it was like, when you start talking about the timey-wimey shit and and all the stuff that happens in the little astral plane or whatever the fuck it's called.
The coordinate.
What is it?
The coordinate. That's what it's called.
Yeah. It definitely, changes some things, but like, he didn't have it easy. Not to say that Levi did, right? I mean, Levi.
Yeah.
But the things
both you guys haven't seen the little shorts, because the shorts
really true. That's true.
Background.
Yeah.
No, Levi is the shit. No, let's not get that twisted. But yeah, keep going.
I am right.
I'm not arguing.
What's God, again, the blonde friend of Aaron.
Erwin.
Erwin.
Yeah.
He had it hard too. And he is the epitome of just good. He's always seen the bright side of things, despite all his trauma. Even when he inherited the Titan.
Oh, you mean Armin?
Yeah, Armin, not Ermin. Armin. Yeah. Even when he became a Titan and inherited that, history, those memories, he didn't break bad. He stayed looking out for other people. So what happened, Aaron? What's your problem?
All right, check this out. What I like about Aaron, though, right? Again, this is good storytelling, because like, we can debate the guy. I'm not going to debate whether or not he's good or bad. I do think he is fucked up now. Well, yeah, he's fucked up. He's bad now. Okay. But what I admire about him, though, is, again, how even like he learns, he adapts. So for example, I love that scene where it's him, Mikasa, and Armin, and he's like negotiating with them, whatever, and he totally plays them both, because he knows that Armin is smarter than him. So he basically gets into a fist fight with Armin, and he also knows that Mikasa can kick his ass. So instead of like fist fighting with her, he fucking fucks her
Breaks
up.
Her.
Yeah, and it worked. And he also knew that, like, it's just like, and even when he's fighting in Liberia, like, he's legitimately just working the Warhammer Titan, like, he's like freezing himself, jumping out becoming a new Titan. Like he's a tactician, and that
Yep.
to me is I love the ability to just kind of grow and learn from your mistakes and master your fucking chessboard. I love that shit. But yeah, is he a good guy? No. I mean, he is, and he ends up the villain of the entire fucking show, which is I think is great because
Oh
when you
yeah.
start the show, it's like he's the fucking protagonist. I
Yeah,
love
he's
that
the guy
shit.
you're following. Everything
Yep.
is operating around him. And then, I mean, technically, in the end of the third season, it still is, but in a very different way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that's one of the things, Andrew, that you can see. Like one of the things you value in yourself and other people is just like strength of character. So I feel, yeah, Aaron. So you can see not Aaron as a good guy, but you can have sympathy. Maybe not sympathy is the right word, but you can like still see him as
There's something
human.
to be learned, and as well as
Yeah.
I just think that at the end of the day, what I appreciate, frankly, is people who can kind of control their controllables and not be a victim of circumstance and literally just try to, like, no matter what happens, it goes back to even Rocky. It's kind of like, the idea of, like, it's not how many times you fall down, it's how many times you get up. Resilience is a value that I have. That's
Yeah.
what it is. And he's a resilient motherfucker.
And violent.
He's
Oh,
hard to kill.
so violent.
Oh,
So
so
violent.
violent. Yeah, and also you mentioned, that's the other thing, like, because you mentioned, of course, how that was one of your reservations. Like you said, points can be made without the violence. So the fact that you even watched the
Resiliency
show,
can be built
yes,
without
yeah, that's what we talked
violence.
about. Yes, yes, yes. Um, yeah, I don't know. I appreciate you watched the show despite the fact that the violence is arguably, like some might say, gratuitous. I would say it's just unblinking. I don't know if it's straight up like gore for the sake of gore. There's other shows that are like that for sure. Like, oh my God. Anyways, there's some other anime that I could tell you about that you don't need to watch. But this one, it was just more like, nope, this is what happened. We have swords. We will cut your ass. But it's not like, yeah, that's everywhere. Hoo-hoo.
Yeah.
It's not like
It's
that.
not glorified like,
Yeah.
yeah, war. It's like shit survival. So I get that level of gore. I just wasn't expecting it when I watched the show because it's a cartoon, right? I've
Right.
never watched anime before, so I didn't realize it was, very much for an adult audience. It is not for a kid at all.
At all.
So with it just being a cartoon, I was, I kind of knew what it was about, but I didn't connect cartoon with violence. So just seeing that, it was just like, oh, okay, wow, that's a lot of blood. And it wasn't really gory, but it was just lots of blood, just people getting eaten, just straight, just masticated. So, I was not
Ready.
anticipating that.
Well, I'm glad you liked it. And I hope you like the political intrigue and everything else as well, because there's a lot of class stuff going on, and just and a lot of just straight up, I'll say, like, to me it's like racism shit, because literally the Eldians and the Marlians and the children of Ymir, all that shit, it's some genocide shit.
Aryans, straight up Aryans, blonde
Yeah.
hairs, blue eyes. Just that's why I think I asked you about it right away. I was like, isn't it's like a Japanese cartoon? So I expected it to like take place in Japan. So I was expecting Asian characters, black
That's a
hair. I was
whole
like,
that's a whole nother
why is
conversation.
everybody white?
Yes, except for Mikasa, who is like half
Except for
Chinese.
Mikasa, yeah, who's a badass. And then Levi too, but again, Ackerman. So
Yeah. Well, I just gotta say thank you so much for joining. I don't know if this is your first podcast ever, but if it
it is.
was, I mean, yeah, I think you were amazing to listen to. I was like listening to you, like, just on the show, but thinking I'm gonna enjoy listening to it afterwards, and hopefully the people who are listening now are feeling the same way I did. So thoughtful, so well spoken, so insightful, such a lateral thinker. I just feel like I just feel smarter whenever I talk to you.
Oh, gee, look
No,
at
I mean it. I do, and I also think to myself, I have cool friends. Sorry, just being real.
and
So
bragging rights kind of thing. I
straight
like
up,
it.
straight up. So
Yeah, I love
thank
thinking
you.
about this stuff. Thank you for always like bringing new movies into my life that aren't just entertainment for entertainment's sake. They do force you to think. And I like that you do, actually think about it, like think about underlying themes and, you know, um, overarching um, characters, like how their actions like affect the world as a whole. I love thinking about that and I love talking about that. So that's why when you were like Dune and Attack on Titans, I was like, yeah, no problem. Cool. Cool. Because both of those are just so world building, so universe building, and they're just so many intriguing things that even if you watch it for the surface value, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it's almost amazing to me that people don't think past just the surface part, because man, that's where the really cool stuff comes out. The really good conversations take place.
And unfortunately, and this is not all S types, obviously, not all, because clearly Kevin thinks about themes, but yeah, the end, it's really more of an N type per thing to think about themes, whereas S types are more about the plot and the story. And so yeah, they estimate at least North America, like 75% of us are S's and 25% are N's. So that's why, you know, that's the answer to your question ultimately. That's why. But when you do find those people who get into the themes and talk about them, it's like, yes, you know, it's like you can just talk for forever.
What was that new Ryan Reynolds movie that came out that he was like in
The
a
video game one?
game? Yeah.
Yeah,
Free
something
Guy.
man or
Free Guy.
yeah, yes.
What is it?
Free
Free
guy?
Guy.
What? Fruity Kai?
Free Guy.
Free. Yep, that's it. So the first time I saw that movie, like at the end, I was like, man, that movie was good. Obviously anti-capitalism though, right? And people I talked to were like, what? No, not everything is anti-capitalism. I was like, well, you didn't watch the same movie as I did. So even something as ridiculous as that, we can just
Oh yeah,
spiral, go down those rabbit holes. So thank you for guiding me down those rabbit holes and giving me more rabbit holes to just shoot down. That was.
Well, I hope this doesn't sound cliche, but I feel like a host, like you know. But hopefully we can have you back at some point, because I would love because I'll be between that and then also like maybe once you see like whatever, just we have you back talk about whatever. But I also just offline when you finish Call Saul, Better Call Saul. I want to have that kind of debrief, because I was very happy with that ending.
Awesome.
I'm not saying shit, obviously, but
good.
Like,
Thank you.
It's a good show. So
good. I'm glad. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm sorry Lost didn't end up that way, because that's the one thing I hear about Lost is it's so good until the end.
See, and I love the ending. Like personally, I think the ending was perfect. So it's just that show was hard because when you look at it in the era that it came out, it was 24 episodes a season, cranked out on national television, where they didn't know what they had when they started the show, even though it was, at the time, it was the most expensive TV pilot in history. Wow. They didn't know. And so when it blew up the way that it did, all of a sudden the network was like, yeah, we need more of this. And the creators were like, no, we kind of have a plan. And they're like, yeah, tough shit. You're going to make more. And so when you're in the middle, like around season 3 and maybe even some of season 4, while there are some incredible things that happen in there, and I think it's the season 3 finale that's fucking blows your mind. There's a lot of stuff in there that is filler to make the network happy. So they kind of had to circle back to where they wanted to be at the end. And some people, because there was all this filler stuff in the middle, there were questions asked that either weren't answered or weren't satisfactorily answered for some people, and things like that. So there's a subset of people that hated the ending. There's a subset of people that just wanted more from the ending. There's people like me that thought it was perfect. And that's kind of hard. I think I've talked about it before, but a bunch of the same people that made Lost made this show called The Leftovers on HBO. And that is arguably a better told story than Lost, because it's 3 seasons. They never got pushed by anybody. So their story goes from A to B to C, and it ends exactly the way it should have. And it all makes sense. There's nothing left unanswered that doesn't need to be, whatever. I still like Lost more. It's like my favorite show of all time, but The Leftovers is a really good show.
I like that perspective. I'm
Yeah.
glad you liked the ending. I love when people are a fan of the show and it ends. I always love hearing that, oh, it ended perfectly. I couldn't have asked for a better ending, because I feel like that it's hard to stick a landing. So even though Lost,
Mhm.
you know, it is a controversial whether it's good or whatever, I'm glad that being a fan from the beginning, you feel satisfied and feel like it ended the way it should. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm very glad for you.
I know we're winding down for you, Sarah, but just out of curiosity, did you ever see Battlestar Galactica? Did you watch that one?
Yeah, yeah, I did.
Oh, wow. Oh, you're
Yeah.
fucking amazing. All right. So I guess so that's the other one where people like a lot of people were not happy with that ending. I was okay with it.
I
I
loved
think
it.
Kevin liked
I
it.
thought
Yeah,
it was
Kevin
fucking
loved
I
it.
brilliant.
liked it.
I
You
thought it
liked
was
it too?
genius.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have, before I can speak on it in depth, I would definitely have to rewatch it. I feel, oh no, I'm getting it confused with another one. I have seen Battlestar Galactica. It was so long ago and I've only seen
Sure.
it one time.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
would definitely have to review it again. But I definitely remember being like, yeah, that was good.
Cool.
What was that sci-fi series on Amazon that
Oh, The
had
The
Expanse?
Expanse.
The Expanse? The
Yeah.
Expanse. Like, I really loved the first few seasons. I feel like I didn't hate the way it ended, but it definitely,
Same.
in episodes, like it definitely went off the rails, and I was like, oh, what are they doing?
Same.
But then they brought it back, and I was like, okay, I'm not mad, I'm not mad. But it was a ride going through it. Like, oh, okay, this
Mhm.
is why are we going this direction? This is,
I
you're
feel
building
like
on the
with
hinges.
that show, it would do a lot of build up, build up, build up, build up, and then the resolution would be like one episode. Like, okay,
Yep,
seriously, we sat through all that shit just to have it all fixed like that. Like, are you
yep, yep,
serious right
yep,
now? You know,
yep,
and then even the last season, like obviously the one guy got into some controversial shit, so they like wrote him out, you know, and then I know the show is supposed to go on like in the books or whatever, but like
Mhm.
I don't know. I just feel like I don't regret my time on the show, but to me I did feel like my time was a little wasted, you know, but again it was but I also identified really with the honestly I like the Martians, dude. Like there's a theme here with Andrew, but like I like the Martians, and I liked like their whole thing, and but the first two seasons were probably my favorite.
yep,
So yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
yep. I like sci-fi, so shows like, I feel like I like sci-fi so much because sci-fi is inherently like
Allegorical.
it breaks apart society, right? It breaks apart like class systems, socioeconomic status. Like that is inherently sci-fi. That's
Yes.
why I like the sci-fi genre so much, because that's what I think about all the
Same. And on
time.
that note, I think that's it. That's a perfect note to bid you
All right,
adieu.
thank you guys. It was super,
Yes.
super fun,
Thank you for
and I would
coming.
definitely like to be on again.
Yeah, we'll make that happen.
All right, have a good night.
You too.
See you later.
All
Mwah.
right. You.
She's the shit.
She's
Sorry.
cool.
I'm like that actually went even better than I could have imagined. I
Yeah, that
love
was great. That was really awesome. I'm gonna switch up my background. I was trying to find something like this before. Since this movie is all about Rocket, I wanted to have a better Rocket background.
Man, I mean, and you know me, I like having my opinion changed. I know there's probably other stuff to talk about, but I don't know, like I don't know. I just I mean, can I open the Christmas present? Like take control if I'm going too crazy. But I was so impressed. I'm like, James, like you did it. Like you I it was a damn good movie. I mean, it wasn't like perfect, but it was better than I expected, and my expectations were not low. Like they weren't low, but it
Right.
was still better than I expected. So, and it had more heart and feeling, and fucking Lila. Oh my God, it was a beautiful movie, and I
Yeah,
can't
I
wait to see what he does with DC.
yeah, it's funny that you said that because that was my exact thought when I walked out of the theater. It was like, okay, now I'm ready for James Gunn's Superman. I'm genuinely curious to see where he goes with that because um there was so much heart in this movie. This movie, I want to be really careful. I don't want to spoil stuff, but at the same time, let me say we probably will spoil something. So if you haven't seen Guardians 3,
Leave
pause,
now.
skip this part, come
Hell
back,
yeah.
whatever. Um, but trying to specifically stick with the things that are in the trailer, at least we know this is a rocket centric film, right? Like it's it's been kind of talked about a lot. And we know that we see a lot of these other animal characters that he has some sort of interaction with. And there is a reason for sure that Rocket doesn't talk to people about this. And like this, there were tears in my eyes during this movie. Like I definitely had moments there. There's some very, very sad parts in Rocket's past. Um, and yeah, I thought, I mean, for the most part, it was a pretty fucking great movie. I think Gunn stands up there with the best directors in the MCU.
Yes.
I think you know, the Russos were obviously awesome. Like I love the Russos. I'll stand behind them all day long. But Gunn did something really special, and I think um, a lot of that stems from A, his creativity, but B, his ability to work with these actors and get something out of them that maybe somebody else wouldn't have. I saw something just yesterday, I think, and maybe you were the one that posted it, I don't know, but that Nebula's character was solely informed and created from a note that she got from James Gunn on like day one. Like she wasn't quite sure what she was doing, and so James Gunn said, "Well, play her character, use her voice. I want it to sound like a mix between Marilyn Monroe and Clint Eastwood." And like, so that knowing that that was the voice she was going to use, that drove the character and set all this stuff in motion for Nebula. And it's such a simple, excuse me, a simple direction, right? Like it's not 1,000 words on this is how the character is, but you know, he knows what to get out of people. And you can, one thing that I noticed too in this film, especially, is there's like a million cameos. Like you see these people that are loyal to James Gunn. And if you remember when he got booted from the MCU for a minute, everybody was like, cool, we're out too. Right.
Yes.
Like, so he has built a real loyalty behind himself. And that tells me that he is someone that people enjoy working with. Right. Like you can't have that following of people without being a joy to work with.
Exactly.
You know, like Joss Whedon didn't have that following of people, right? Like he made some great stuff. And before we found out he was a total D-bag, like his stuff was solid. Like his stuff was really good. But people follow James Gunn from project to project. Michael Rosenbaum's been in a bunch of his stuff. Sylvester Stallone's been in a bunch of his stuff. Obviously his brother is in fucking everything he does. Nathan Fillion, he's worked with a few times. Like all these people are very, very loyal to him. I mean, it's kind of law now apparently, but his wife is in this, and she was in Peacemaker, which she was really good in actually. So it's interesting. It's interesting to see all these people that like working with him. I think I don't want to spoil it, but like that actually made that final end credit scene or the final banner at the end really surprising to me. Like I didn't expect to see that. But yeah, it's super interesting. There's a lot of stuff set up. You know, I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to spoil everything. I don't want to say who lives and who dies or whatever. But shit, it was a good flick.
Well, in that case, I think we'll probably return to this topic a little later to talk a bit more about the more spoilery stuff. But yeah, man, well, like I was so impressed. It was a long movie, but I think that it needed to be the right send off. Also, one of the things that I love about anything I watch is I want you to show me something I haven't seen before. And there was one scene towards the end, from an action perspective, I think you probably know what I'm talking about, that brought back for me a bit of that wow factor in terms of, wow, what an amazing sequence. Like, you know, because it really just, for me, it was like eye candy, but also communicated just how wonderfully talented this group was when they worked together. to accomplish a goal. So I hope I said that in a way that doesn't kill it for you. Because I remember like even people talking about the one scene in Endgame. I remember like there was someone talking about Endgame. He was raving. He was like straight up raving. But he's like, there is one scene. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's going to go down into history. It's like one of the best scenes ever. And I think that he just said there's one scene. I think he may have even said Cap, but he just said there's one scene. And that's that. That's all I'm saying. So when I saw it, I'm like, that's the scene, and I agree. So in this movie, yeah, and I'll just say this: the Guardians 2, I think, is an underrated film, but I think the opening credits of that movie is great because of the song and what's happening during the song while the credits are rolling. I'm getting chills just remembering it, and I feel like that's what the scene I'm talking about almost like was a nod back to, but it did but it was like it took it another level. And that's also important because I watched Days of Future Past, and Days of Future Past had that one scene with Quicksilver in the cafeteria or whatever, the kitchen, and then they did it again in Apocalypse, but it came off so whack to me because it was like, this is a complete carbon copy of what you did last time. We've seen this before. It's whack. Stop it. It does that. So this movie, yes, it reminds you a bit of that scene, but it's different and adds to it. It doesn't copy it. And okay, I've said too much. Now I'm thinking of REM. I haven't said enough. Anyway, that was just a dream or whatever he says. Losing my religion. Love the damn movie. And yes, you said it, Kev. Like, it does, I think, do a good job of setting things up. Personally, I'm sad for both. Like, James Gunn, like, you are now flying away from the nest. You are now a king bird too, So I love seeing Kevin and James's names next to each other, because James is now elevated to become the Kevin of DC. Yeah. And yes, again, Andrew is okay with being proven wrong. I welcome it. I want to be wrong. I don't want people to fail. I want people to win. But I'm also very real. But I am now legitimately like, okay, like, DC might actually be in good hands. You just, the Suicide Squad might not be the best IP, but when you have a good IP, you can probably do some cool ass shit. And hell, even what's his name, the Warlock dude, like, I liked him more than I thought I was going to.
Yeah, I didn't know what they were gonna do with him, because in the comics he's pretty fucking powerful. Like, he's a big deal, and I like that they kind of softened him. They not quite infantilized him, but they definitely knocked him down a peg. Like, he's still learning who he is, and I almost feel like that's like a more comedic and childish setup for what he's going to do with Superman. Like, Superman is still going to be figuring out all the things that he can do. Like, we're not going to get an origin story for Superman when that comes out. We're not going to learn, oh my God, he can fly. He's going to learn he can fly. Like, he's going to know the basics. He can fly. He's got, laser eyes and some shit. But like, the magnitude of things that he can do is what we'll find out in Gun Superman, I think, and things like that. So I do think that that Will Poulter's Adam Warlock is a good kind of gauge for the story that James Gunn will try to tell. And I liked Adam Warlock's through line in this one.
Absolutely.
And so that was really good. I really liked the ending. Like, I want to talk about the ending, but I don't want to spoil it because it is like super spoilery. But there's some really neat storytelling things at the very end of the film that I really like.
Are you talking about the after credit scenes or
before that, like the last 15, 20 minutes, maybe, post action stuff and just, closing out the story bit of the movie. But I really thought there was some very impressive stuff. Maybe it's not spoilery, but it kind of reminded me of like the last day of summer camp, and I could explain that better later when we're actually talking about it. But it was like the first thing I thought of when they were ending the film.
Yeah, because believe it or not, that went right over my head. I never went to
Did
summer
it?
camp. So yeah, I yeah, no.
Uh, but I mean, it was so good, and really like the rocket stuff.
Oh my God.
Man, that shit
Yeah,
was
dude,
good, and that hurt.
it
Like
hurts.
there is pain in that little raccoon's past, man. And it was good. It was well told. Like there was no lack of emotion in this film from any
Dude.
standpoint. Um, and the villain, the High Evolutionary, I it was nice to see a villain that is just a dick. Like he wants to be a god, right? And not to the level of a Thanos or somebody else. Like he doesn't necessarily want to rule, but he wants to create and have it be something. And if it's not, then fuck it. Like, and he does not care about life at all. He cares about the what he's creating, but only if it's what he wants it to be. Um, and so he makes a really good bad guy, not on the intelligence level of a Thanos or some of the big bads we're looking at like down the line, but in a single film he's a really good single bad guy.
Yeah, agreed. And oh wow, okay. So I saw Linda Cardellini's name in the credits. I wasn't sure who she was, but now I just finally looked it
She's
up
Lila.
and she killed it.
She's
Killed it.
great. She's
She like that was honestly one of my favorite characters of the whole damn movie.
mhm.
And yeah, I can't say enough. Like Lila was, oh my God. And I think voice has a lot to do with it. So
Yeah.
the delivery of the Lila character was there was so much heart in that.
Yeah, and I think Rocket, his story is the heart of the movie, but I think she's the heart of Rocket's story, right? Like
Yeah.
and so that makes that super interesting too. It's just like I could go off and spoil it, but maybe we'll talk about it. Maybe even wait till next week when
Yeah.
hopefully, either somebody else has seen it, or even if it's just you and me, then at least we can feel like the gloves are off, right? Because by the time
Yeah.
it'll drop, it'll have been, a week and a half or whatever, almost 2 weeks, and then I feel like it'll be safe. But I think for me, this was the best movie since Endgame that they've done.
That's what people are saying.
Um,
And I don't think I disagree. I also think though that what makes this movie, I guess I ask myself why, and maybe it's because this feels the most, and I don't want to sound stuck in the past, but this feels the most kind of Infinity Saga-ish,
mhm,
like
for sure,
of the films, you know?
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and it's this one has an advantage because it doesn't have to tie to anything else. Like you're not looking for how all of these characters are going to join the MCU or how they're going to affect. Like when you watch Black Panther and Namor shows up, you're like, what is his impact on the MCU? You watch Multiverse of Madness, you're like, is Scarlet Witch alive and is she going to come back in the MCU? Like all these things are impactful to the MCU, and here James Gunn is closing out a story. Like he's finishing the story of this set of the Guardians of the Galaxy. They can go anywhere with the Guardians later if they want to. Just knowing um, James Gunn and the people that he's worked with and things that have been said in the press, that Dave Bautista isn't interested really in doing it anymore. Zoe Saldana isn't really interested in doing it anymore. So, you have to assume. I mean, I don't count Disney out from being able to bring anybody back if they really want to. Like in 2 years, I could totally picture Robert Downey Jr. showing up as Iron Man for some reason or another because Disney is Disney. So like I don't count anything out, but at the same time, like they can do a Guardians 4, but it's almost like it wouldn't be Guardians 4. It would be New Guardians Volume 1, right? Like I don't even see it as a volume. It would just be a Guardians movie going forward if they do something like that.
Yeah.
Because this was James Gunn's world and he closed it out pretty
Perfect.
fucking perfect.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I do think there's an advantage there that it doesn't necessarily tie into the MCU because they're so cosmically far away from the MCU
Yes.
that they don't necessarily tie in yet.
I think I now it hit me. So as far as the last day at summer camp, I think I it hit me. So as far as just kind of like how things play out,
Yeah.
like in terms of yeah, no, and but I also what that showed me was growth. And it was really one character in particular who, can be seen as more kind of passive and all heart and kind of like just saying, no, I'm going to chart my own course here or whatever. And that was beautiful. Everyone progressed. Hell, even yeah, it's about growth and acceptance and moving on. Dude, Gunn, you
Yeah, dude, he
yeah.
he did an awesome job. Like I said, it's really funny that you texted that because that really was the first thing I thought of when I walked out of the theater. Because despite how much I love the MCU versus how much I love the DC films that have been out, Superman's always been my favorite character in all of comics. And so I'm very protective of that. And so I was super leery of James Gunn taking over and then being like, cool, cool, cool. I'm going to do the tentpole also. And part of me is like, but bro, you need to sit back and concentrate on the bigger picture, not the smaller picture, right? Um, but I think watching this, I can see the seeds of the things that he will potentially do in Superman. And
And
I'm
I
excited
think
for that.
sometimes the best way to lead is by example.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that hopefully like he does a great job and then everything around it will be like, okay, that's the bar we have to hit.
Yeah.
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 So, yeah. I think we did a decent job like talking about it for now.
Yeah.
You watch a gang of shit like Bupkis and
Oh,
we could
shit.
also talk about and we might not even get all of it in there, but like Bupkis for me, and then of course Fatal Track. I'm definitely gonna watch that shit. Like I'm gonna finish it because
Yeah. Here's what I'll do. I will fly through some stuff real quick. Um, I watched Bupkis since you brought it up on Peacock. It's the Pete Davidson. I would call it a dark comedy. It's more intelligent than I expected for sure. It's really funny, but doesn't have to rely on the funny. Like there's a lot of good stuff in there. It's like semi autobiographical, if I can speak English tonight. Um, Great cast. Obviously he plays Pete Davidson, which is hilarious. His mom is played by Edie Falco, who I fucking adore, and then Joe Pesci plays his grandfather. Um, I did not realize Joe Pesci was that old. Like all of a sudden, like he was 80 something, and I was like, holy shit. Um, but it's really good. Like as long as you like comedy, it's not stupid comedy. Like I in my mind, I always have this picture of Pete Davidson's comedy being like silly and kind of dumb. But every time something comes up with Pete Davidson in it, it's always more thoughtful and more poignant than I expected it to be. Even something like Bodies, 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 right? Like that was
Oh, you saw it?
no, I still haven't seen it, but I know that
Okay.
it wasn't just like
Yeah.
dumb stuff. Like there's
Right.
a story to it. And so, watching this, like I've got to train my brain to give Pete Davidson a longer leash than I usually give him. I think his stuff is really good, and I can't recommend it enough. There's definitely it definitely revolves around his drug use a little bit and some things like that. And it ends on like a super crazy cliffhanger that you would not expect a show like this to end on. I think Andy said it in our text, like it felt like it was just going to be like a quick one season show or something like that in the beginning. And where it ends, you're like, no, this is going to go for a little bit.
Hmm.
And there's a little opening title about, some of this stuff is based on reality, some of the stuff is made up for TV and drama, but that opening little mini monologue is read by Lorne Michaels of NBC
SNL.
fame, and so there's a little more behind this than just a single silly season. So I'm excited for season 2. I think it was really cool. Um, I also watched Citadel on Amazon Prime. Nobody needs to watch that. Um, it's your typical like James Bondy spy wannabe show. Like you've got these two leads and Richard Madden and Priyanka Chopra, who are very attractive people. Priyanka
Mhm.
Chopra is one of the most beautiful human beings like on the planet. She's fucking gorgeous. She's not a great actress. I've never seen her in something where I was like, she's gonna win an award. Like she's just not very good. And the whole premise of it is they're in a spy, like as soon as you talk about large spy agencies and then villainous spy agencies, like you're already leaning into the cheese factor of this stuff. And the only thing that even slightly anchors the show in intelligence and reality is Stanley Tucci, who is always awesome, right? But the idea is that they are in this big spy group called Citadel that gets taken down. And when they get taken down, somehow their memories get wiped. Right. And so these two agents, the only two left, they have no memory left. And then the evil villainous Manticore is the name of the other spy agency, is rising up, and so they've got to get their memories back and come and save the day. And it's just
Dumb.
it's just not smart. Like Stanley Tucci comes on and everything he does is so Stanley Tucci. Like he's articulate, he's smart, he's the guy you want to follow, but he's not the guy that's on screen. You have Priyanka Chopra and Richard Madden. It's not great. So I probably won't finish watching it. I just didn't find it very interesting. I think I'd rather watch something like The Diplomat, or which I talked about last week, and I don't think it was necessarily the best show. I think there were some issues that I had with The Diplomat, but it was a far better show than something like Citadel. And I watched the very much maligned Ghosted on Apple TV Plus. That is the Chris Evans, Ana de Armas film. I want to really quick look up the score on Rotten Tomatoes, but anyways, it I don't know, man. Going in knowing that it wasn't good sure helped. It was because I one of the reviews, I think I posted it, but like it's a 27% from the critics, which is terrible, but it's a 58% from the audience score, which is not great. But I'm far more, in tune with that 58%. Going in knowing that it's that bad doesn't make it as bad. There's definitely some problematic things in it. It's not great, but like I posted this and I'll read it because it drives me crazy. The one of the critics said it listlessly wafts between action, comedy, and romance without ever solidifying into a satisfying whole. And I'm like, it was literally an action rom-com. It was all three of those things. So yes, it's going to waffle between those because it's supposed to. It's still a silly premise. It's not a, whatever. But when you're watching an action rom-com, I don't know what you expect. I like, you don't go in an action rom-com and being like, this is going to blow my mind, right? Like, I feel like if Romancing the Stone was made today, which was a film that I fucking loved as a kid,
it would be maligned.
Class, it would get blown, and all it is an action rom-com. Like it doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's not the point. The point is the romance and the action and some of the comedy and some of the stuff that Chris Evans gets to deliver, because he's the comedy. Like she has some lines and stuff. She's not a comedic actress, but he's funny. He's naturally funny, which you forget when you see him as Captain America a lot of the time. But go watch Knives Out, the first Knives Out movie.
It's funny you bring that up because that's a reunion for both of them.
Yeah. And I thought, I mean, it wasn't great, but I didn't hate it. Like I said, knowing that I wasn't going to be like watching an Oscar winner, knowing that I'm watching an action rom-com, I was okay with it. I wouldn't necessarily say that you should go watch it. I don't know that you would love it.
So I never saw Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and I imagine that's an action rom-com. And I remember Out of Sight, with I want to say George Clooney, and I think it was Jennifer Lopez.
J-Lo, yep.
Yeah. And I think that was a decent one, but I saw that in the 90s, so I don't know how it is now.
I feel like Mr. and Mrs. Smith would probably do better today than Out of Sight would. But there's definitely some Mr. and Mrs. Smith stuff in here. I actually think that the new Schwarzenegger show coming out, where it's his daughter, feels more like a Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but father and daughter instead of husband and wife. I don't know if you've seen the trailer for that yet.
Not yet. No.
It looks fun. It's called, I don't know. We'll get to it. But I'll let you look it up while I'm talking. But it looks fucking hilarious. Like for what Ghosted was as a rom-com, this is more of, like I said, a father and daughter, Mr. and Mrs. Smithfield, where Schwarzenegger is a CIA agent on his way out, and he comes to find out that his daughter is a CIA agent. Fubar, yes. And I mean, it looks fun. I don't expect it to be like, I don't expect it to blow my mind, but it looks like a really fun show. It's got a good cast, a lot of funny people in it, and I think it'll be really entertaining.
On Netflix.
Yes, soon, like real soon, like the end of this month, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited for that one. The last new thing that I watched was called Silo. That just started at Apple TV Plus. They only dropped the first 2 episodes. This is one of those shows where you watch the trailer and you're like, okay, I need to sit down. I need to watch. It's going to be smart. And the premise behind this one is all these people live in a silo because the outside world, I don't know if it was a nuclear war, famine, whatever, but they're in this silo because they're safe in there. They know that, and they have a rule where anytime somebody says, I want to leave, they can leave. But they have cameras outside the door. So when you can watch these people try and leave and nobody makes it. So every single time they come out, they say, they talk about how this happens. And like, there's like a hope in the people when they walk out the door. So they always turn around. The first thing you do is clean off the camera because the camera is always dirty. So when somebody leaves, the camera gets cleaned off. You get a clear view of them walking away. And at first everything looks good. And then they stumble and they fall down and they never get back up. And they're always convinced when they leave that they're going to be the one that makes it. And so now, at some point in the first episode, somebody's like, yeah, they're lying to us. I want to be let out. She doesn't make it, obviously, but it starts to trigger all these things. And so the show is going to start unraveling the mystery of why they're in there. Do they need to stay in there? Is it really actually safe on the outside? Are the people falling down and dying? Is that fake? Like, is it being manipulated so it looks like they're falling down and dying, but they're really running off and being happy, right? And just whatever. And it's good so far. It's gritty. It's intelligent. The acting is solid. I don't know the name of the actor. I don't think I've seen him before. He is the main actor in the first 2 episodes. He's a black actor, but I haven't seen him before. But Rebecca
Ferguson.
Yeah, she starts to take over as the lead near the end of the second episode.
David Oyelowo, I think you're thinking of. Rashida Jones is in this too.
She's only in the first episode, unless they're going to flash back to her.
Tim Robbins.
Yes, I forget who he is. Ian Glenn from Game of Thrones. Like it's got a good cast, so I'm really interested in this one to see where it goes. So it really takes off pretty quick, but you only get 2 episodes right now. So if you're a binger, wait a few weeks and start watching it. If you like to sit and think, watch the first 2 episodes and then try and figure out where it's going. It ends in a really interesting spot at the second episode. And there's definitely, I feel like it's a show that's going to ask questions, but also answer them and then ask the bigger question, right? Like it's going to ebb and flow kind of with that, but in a good way, in a way that, like I talked about with Jen, where the last thing he told me kind of seems like it just refuses to answer a question. It just keeps asking more questions.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's about the change from what I saw in the last episode, but that one I would like to see start answering some questions, whereas I think this Silo will ask and answer them as needed to a degree.
Looks like it's based on a self-published ebook. Good Lord.
Yeah, and it's a series, I guess. He's got a few of them, so they've got some material to work with.
Nice.
And for the record, like self-publishing is
the way to go.
It's not the way to go. It's very hard because what you don't get in self-publishing is PR. Yeah. So the promotion's a lot harder. You can be successful, but it's not easy. but it's also not easy to get repped and published in the real world. So it's like this catch-22. It's very easy to self-publish now. Amazon has a way you can just print your shit into a manuscript, put it on their stuff, and it's out there in the Kindle world, and people can read it. But you still have to get people to read it for it to be successful and make you any kind of money.
Right.
Which this obviously was, because they made a whole TV series out of it and spent some money on it. Like, it looks good. So very solid.
I'm actually intrigued.
Yeah, I would definitely say check it out. I think this one, out of all the things that I've watched, is probably more up your alley. I think you might like Bupkis. It is a comedy, but it is, like I said, it's a little more, it's a little smarter than
Al Gore. Like that.
Yes, Al Gore shows up in it.
Like, got me. Like, yeah,
there's a lot of people in it. It's kind of a trip. Like real world people just kind of showing up in these scenes. And Al Gore, and granted, Al Gore's not a character. Al Gore shows up, he's in one slightly extended scene, but the fact that Pete Davidson was like, "Hey, Al Gore, I need you in my show to be Al Gore," and he shows up, like, it's cool.
Word. Yeah, no, I think I'll watch it.
Yeah. So since I've talked so much and left you out, I have two more things to talk about, but I will draw you into my conversation by talking about Fatal Attraction, which just started last week, and I very quickly fell in love with this show. I'm a big Joshua Jackson fan. I'm a big fan of what's her face, Lizzie Kaplan.
Yeah.
And they're really the only two big names in the show, but it's good. It's good in a way that I think it's interesting to see this show run up against Love and Death, because they are sort of a similar idea, but definitely Fatal Attraction leans more into the mental health side of things than Love and Death does. Like, Love and Death is crime of opportunity and even self-defense, really. Whereas Lizzie Kaplan is unhinged, and I think, is it the third episode where you get more of her point of view?
Correct.
And I think that show gains so much from doing that, because you find out just how crazy she is, and how maybe it's not really entirely her fault that she's that crazy, but she's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, no, so I just look at the show as like a cautionary tale. Obviously there is the saying, like, don't defecate where you eat.
Yep.
But it's tempting, because that's like it's opportunity, right? But man, mental health is real. Like, it's when you just see warning signs, just stay away. Like, I don't know, like, I just look at it as just like, man, like, Joshua Jackson, you messed up, never should have got involved with that, and now you're stuck, and now it's like, and I like the non-linear storytelling too. I like the fact that you're able to see, like, it actually starts off with the aftermath, and then I think it's kind of coming back together. And then also, of course, telling it from her side of the story. Lizzie Kaplan plays crazy so well that I'm actually kind of worried that, like, maybe there's a little bit of crazy in you for real. The show is steamier than I expected. It's a trip how, like, in this day and age now, back at, we're all the same age, so, like, I didn't really expect, like, again, it's not crazy nudity, but it's enough to where, like, you don't want, like, your kids necessarily in the room when that happens. It's some pretty crazy nudity type shit going on, and they're humping, they're thrusting, like, it's for real. But yeah, I was captivated. I'm not a binger, but did I watch, like, all 3 episodes, like, in one shot?
As fast as possible?
I did. I absolutely did. And for the first time, I was like, damn, I gotta wait another week now. Fuck, So I actually, I don't know. I wonder if this was the kind of show that maybe could have been dropped all at once. I know we talk about how all at once is better for light, and if it's heavier, do it, sequentially, so that people can talk about it. But I think right now, what's I think tricky is that, there is that stereotype of like making women crazy, and how, you know, people can kind of see that as like misogynistic and sexist and all that kind of stuff. Which is why I thought it was interesting that the producers and directors, like a lot of them are women. There's actually a director named Silver Tree, and I looked her up, and apparently she actually worked on lots of cool stuff like Suits, Shameless, You, but then also The Flight Attendant and Dead to Me. But I think Shameless, You, and Suits are pretty big names. So I think that she's a director. So I think that's worth noting. I wonder what kind of social conversation the show is going to generate, because
Yeah.
right now it's not getting a lot of like acclaim. Like, I think it's getting mixed reviews, but me personally, I like it. And I think the mixed reviews might be coming from the fact that people think that this is a cliche. Oh, she's crazy. Like, women are crazy, like that kind of thing. But I think it's going to be smarter than that, because again, we saw from episode 3, it told her side of the story. She's absolutely trying to get help. She's not getting the help that she needs. And so it might be a commentary on how, again, as a society, we really need to take mental health more seriously. And, you know, not to go there, but I'm going to just say very quickly, that one gentleman who was, you know, killed in New York on a subway from a chokehold. You know, yeah, he got arrested like what 40 something times before that's an issue. I mean, whatever, like that's, we got to figure that shit out. But the fact is, you know, he needed help, didn't get it, now he's dead.
Yeah.
So mental health, it's like gun control, or guns in this country, whatever. It's like we got to figure this shit out. So that's that. And I'm just hoping that this show is a good um, spark for more conversation around mental health.
Yeah, and I think too, yes, you worry about the cliche of her being the crazy woman, right? Like, because you can easily do that. But it's important to watch too and see that he's not helping the situation. Like, it's not like he's not the victim as much as like he tries to place himself out to be. There's a good half a dozen times that he could have stopped this before it ever went anywhere. And he chose not to. So like, he made his bed, he just happened to make that bed with a crazy person. And like, there's a moment when he's like, "Oh, I didn't think this was what we were doing," and I was like, "Bro," I was
He's
like,
like, what
"What
are
are
we
you?"
doing?
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
like,
dude.
"What are you doing?" Because you just. But I just looked it up on Rotten Tomatoes, and just like actually like Ghosted, it's a 37% from the critics and 67 from the audience. So like,
Fascinating.
yeah, I'm so like I said before, I'm almost fucking over critics right now. Like, I don't know what they're looking for in the shit they're watching. Um, but funny enough, they love Guardians 3. Um, but but yeah, I enjoy it. Like, I'm waiting for the next episode. It was really good. Um, and I think they're both great. And I think Lizzie Kaplan, I think I told you, she did the second season of Castle Rock, which was on Hulu. And she plays Annie Wilkes, which is the character that uh, Fried Green Tomatoes, Kathy Bates, that Kathy Bates plays in um,
Oh
fuck,
yes,
dude,
Misery.
Misery. Jesus Christ, I'm losing it, man. But yeah, Kathy Bates in Misery is the adult version of the character that Lizzie Kaplan plays um, in Castle Rock, and she funny like a lot of her issues that she plays in that one feel very similar to this one. Like, she's manipulating things and all that, and so she's definitely like, she's crazy in Fatal Attraction. She's not well, but she's good, and she plays that part really well. And she kind of always has. Like, I think she was a little nutty on True Blood too. Um, like, but I'm a big fan of hers. I like her a lot. So
My
it,
love, I'm sorry, go.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, my love for Lizzie Kaplan goes all the way back to the first time I saw her, which was in Cloverfield. So
Mm-hmm,
she
mm-hmm.
played Marlena. So there's a character named Marlena. I forget who it was, even in the first episode of Fatal Attraction. I wonder if that was like a little Easter egg to, you know, to her character from. But you know, her character in Cloverfield, I loved the Marlena character because she, you know, she just, yeah, she was like HUD, the videographer in that movie, was all about Marlena, and as a viewer, I totally sympathized and got it. She was like the Nebula of the crew.
Mhm.
I'm connecting it all together. The cynical one, INTJ, by the way, Nebula. Anyway, so random. Is there anything else? There's something else I wanted to say about the damn show, but I remember now. Joshua Jackson. So I never watched not One Tree Hill,
Dawson's
Dawson's
Creek.
Creek. So I never knew the guy. I never saw Fringe. You said I'd like it. I probably would. But it's like, to me, it's just crazy how I always kind of knew who this guy was. He's kind of a cherubic looking young kid, but in this show, he's a grown ass man. Like I buy it. I don't buy it as like Leo, for example. Leonardo DiCaprio, for the longest time, I always thought of him as like he's such a kid, even though he's playing a man, but he's so boyish, right? But now I finally see him as mannish because he's like a little portly, whatever. But like Joshua, he just has this sort of gravitas and heft that I'm buying, and he actually feels older than me, but he's not. But he's got gray hair and shit, and he's like whatever. He's just, I think he's nailing the role. They're both nailing the role. And I like his friend too. Whatever, like I guess his dad's buddy. Like,
Oh
but
yeah,
he
Mike, I
also,
think the character's name is.
yeah, I like him a lot,
Yeah, I like him too.
and I like the daughter, and I think it's also kind of like this show is all about gender relationships, right? So the relationship between the daughter and father, we're gonna see how that plays out too.
Yes.
Yeah, I think he has, I don't know, he's fucked up. Like a Joshua Jackson character is fucked up too, but just
Yeah, he's
maybe
definitely
in a
damaged.
socially acceptable way, or more socially acceptable.
Right, right.
And maybe that's what it is. Like maybe fucked up people attract each other. Again, it's all about themes and things, like
Yeah.
analyzing, you know.
I,
But
I think too, when you said like this could have been a bingeable show, because I think at least it doesn't feel like there's necessarily a mystery to unravel in this one.
yeah,
We now, if it turns out that she didn't actually die and she's still alive, maybe that is something. Um, but like I read too that in the original Fatal Attraction,
yes,
the original story was that Glenn Close's character was actually going to kill herself and
hmm,
frame him for the murder.
yes,
And I don't remember the reason, but they steered away from that because I think maybe they thought that was even too dark for the story they were telling, because that's some crazy shit, right?
yes, it is.
But I can totally see this version of, because
Into it, yeah,
we don't know how she died, but he's in jail because she died.
yes,
So barring a brilliant faking of her own death, which it's television, so it's possible. But I could see her character from where she's at being like, "Oh yeah, well, if I'm going to go down, you're going to go down with me,"
yeah,
and doing that. Um, so it is going to be interesting to see it unravel. I don't mind there being a week between episodes, but it would have been a good just drop all at once and binge. Um, but yeah, I'm ready for the next one. I'm excited for it. It's good.
word up.
Um, cool. And then, so the last thing I've got real quick, or I don't know how real quick it is, but I watched the entirety of the Scream franchise this week,
Ah, yes.
except for Scream 1. I watched that a couple of weeks ago with one of my sons. So I just started with 2, but it had been a long time. Like I didn't remember any of the other movies. So these all felt relatively new to me. And, getting to the 2 newest ones, I finally understood why there was so much hype around them. I think they are the third and second best films in the franchise, respectively, is where I put them after watching it. Because Scream started to suffer from what every horror franchise suffers from. It just feels like it's the same thing over and over and over again. In its own way, it kind of is. But what does set it apart is that, yes, Ghostface is always your bad guy, but it's never the same guy. Like, so, you never quite know who it is. It is funny because now watching this last one, I remember your comment on it was like, these people get the living shit kicked out of them, and then they show up somewhere and they're totally fine. And so that is, you're like, what? But man, the last one was really good.
Yeah,
Like the last one was really good. And I was like, okay, I'm ready for Scream 8, which is or 7, which to me is like a crazy thing to say because I wasn't even ready for Scream 5 and 6, right?
Right.
Um,
Good question though, dude.
hmm.
Like, how the hell did Homeboy survive? There's no like or keep it like not too spoilery, but I think you know what I'm talking about with like the brother of like the other girl. Like, dude, no, dude. Like you were like you were like Swiss cheese. Like it
Yeah,
was.
yeah, yeah.
How are you
Yeah.
alive? No, dude, you're dead. Like anyway,
It's
that's the part.
he's the new Dewey though, because if you watch the old ones, I mean that dude has no business being alive.
Okay,
Like
okay,
Dewey got pin cushioned in like three different movies,
okay.
and he's still out
Fair.
there.
Okay.
But yeah, dude got it pretty brutal in six. Like when they started wheeling him out, I was like, okay.
No.
I was like,
I was
okay,
like, come on.
yeah,
I mean, I'm glad. It's
yeah,
cool,
yeah.
but
But I didn't think I'm a big fan of Wednesday Adams.
yeah,
What's
yeah,
her
Jenna
face,
Ortega.
Jenna Ortega. Like I'm a big fan of hers. I like her, but she actually, to me, I expected her to feel like the star of this,
Yeah,
but
but she
the
did.
other girl really did. I think her name is Melissa Barrera. And I
Yeah,
didn't think I was going to like her at first, and I really
yeah.
like her, and especially the things she did in the third movie because, or the second movie, because they could go a bunch of different ways in a seventh film now.
Hmm.
Like they really could, they could go really crazy with it. They could do something really wild and something new and interesting. Um, and I don't know. I don't know. Like it whatever they do will be a genuine mystery. I just think it's amazing how many people hate these people over seven films. Um, I and the other thing that surprised me is that I did not miss Nev Campbell
Yes.
in seven in six.
Yeah.
Um, I do think like I'm happy for her that she stood up for herself and said, if you're not going to pay me something that respects my history in the movie, just leave me out of it. Right? Like I think that's fair. I think if they were going to put her in it, she deserves to be paid for being the fucking cornerstone of the franchise for basically five films. Like she was still a key component of five.
Oh yeah.
Um and so but it's saying like I said, I didn't miss her. It didn't need her in it. And I don't think it needs any of them in it going forward. Like
Yeah.
if they get rid of
Or
Gale
four.
Weathers too, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Give me the new crew and let's go from there.
Exactly.
Um, but I it was I was fading when I got to four. Like I was like, okay, we're doing the same thing. Although I did think four was better than three. Um, and so I was like, okay, this is whatever. And then when I actually sat down and watched five, I was like, oh, okay, because I tried to watch it when it first hit on Peacock, and it was a rough night. Like I was tired or whatever, and I only made it through like 20 minutes of it, and I fell asleep. Part of me was like, if I can fall asleep watching it, is it that good? And now I look back and I was like, no, dipshit, you were just tired. Because I really enjoyed it, and then six was awesome. Like six was
Yeah.
really really good, and arguably the only reason I put one over six is because it's the one that started the whole chain of
Exactly.
events, right? Like,
Man, I gotta say, like the other death that I fuck whatever. I'll just say I'll because I don't want to spoil too much, but like let's just say window ladder. That's all I gotta say. Yep. That was just like that
yeah,
sucks.
yeah. I was like, oh man.
And she was hot too. Right? It's
Mhm.
like, I'm done. All right. I'm like, what a
Yeah,
waste. What a fucking
yeah.
waste. All right. That's it.
But yeah. So here's the other thing that was really weird to me when I sat down and watched the franchise is that one, two, and three, and five and six are all on Paramount Plus, but Scream Four is not. I had to
um,
find it on Stars.
You know what's funny? I have a confession to make. So believe it or not, I'm a fronter. I'm a perpetrator. I've only seen one and two. I have not seen three or four, but I know that the blonde
Hayden
in
Panettiere.
yes, Hayden I think shows up in four, and that's that's what I
Four,
understand.
four, four. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's from four. Um, but yeah, no, I got to go back and do it. I tried watching two. I just got bored. but but that's just me because I have like severe ADD. So that's just nothing against the movies. So that leads me to my next question. If you had to rank them, like all of them, how would you do it on
I've
the
got it
spot?
written down right here.
Oh, that's what's up.
So 1, 6, 5, 2, 4, 3.
Ah,
Because I actually I didn't expect it, but I really do think 5 and 6 were better than the other sequels. But like I said, I'm stoked. Like whatever they do with 7, as long as they get the right people. I think was 7 or was it 5? Or sorry, I keep saying 7. Either 5 or 6 was the first one without Wes Craven, as Wes Craven passed away.
probably 5.
I think it was 5.
I think it was dedicated to Wes Craven.
Yeah,
Actually.
yeah. So I was trying to remember where I remember that
I
being
think Kevin
like at the end.
Williamson, maybe. I think that's
Yeah.
he's who directed it.
But they did a good job. They did a really good job.
Yes. I was gonna. Oh yeah, I remember now because you're so good at like predicting shit. Like, did you see like the reveal at the end of 6? Did you see that coming, or was that pretty original for you?
I felt like the big bad of the bad guys didn't necessarily shock me,
Oh
but I also didn't quite predict it. Like I wasn't sold on it. Like I wasn't sitting there like waiting for that to be the guy. But when he came out, I was like, okay. The
nice.
the third of the reveals though was the one I was like, oh damn, that was slick,
Yeah.
As far as where the series goes, I think that's the next film is where everything, like I said, can change. I think you could very easily she could be the bad guy. Like I could see the Melissa Barrera character become what they always say in every single film. They're like, well, what if one of the victims, like the person being like actively hunted, is actually the person? Like they've talked about that like every single time. And I think they could legitimately do that in the next one because of the psychology that they've set up for her character. So yeah,
she is her father's child.
yeah. And right now she has been able to use that to her advantage and keep the demons at bay while using the worst of it for herself. And they almost like handed it to you at the end when she walked out and she's got the mask in her hand, but then she drops it and leaves it, right, instead of holding on to it. But to me, like, that's the next crazy thing that you can do. It doesn't mean that's what they'll do, but like that's the next crazy thing that they can do. It may be too straightforward, too easy to do because they've set it up so well. But it'll be interesting. Like it has turned a corner back into a really, really good franchise.
I was ready for a certain character, and I was like, I thought it might be over for that character, and I was ready for it. I was going to be sad. Like, I think what I'm talking about because it was a very extended scene and there was a lot of effort going into it. I actually thought that character might be the one, but once I realized, no, this character is probably going to die, I was like, well, damn, I thought I didn't care about this character, but I actually kind of do. Especially, I think it's most tragic when it's most tragic when they actually put up a fight. Like, the longer and better the fight, and then finally it's just like, you're like,
yeah, like, oh man.
Yeah, but so anyway, I'm not saying where they live or die because I'm going to confuse your asses, but I think what I'm talking about. And I was just like, damn, what a scene. Like I felt that was probably, that's the scene that sticks out to me the most as far as like survival, because you're supposed to be safe in that situation and you're not. And it's not even like a house. It's like a nice fucking place and they still got in. Crazy.
Yeah.
And took out your mate like that.
Yeah, instantly.
Who's not a small dude.
yeah, dude was beefcake. And he didn't have a good go of it either.
No.
So we covered fucking like literally covered like everything under the sun. So but
show, man.
I don't think it's going to be that long of an episode. We're maybe a little extended, but I think we did pretty good.
Yeah, a little over 2 hours probably.
Yeah.
today, but I think it was jam-packed because we have some fast talkers with a lot of content.
Yeah. And I did definitely through the stuff that I just watched, but I also, because a lot of that stuff is like the first couple of episodes of new shows, there's not a lot to talk about. So, but cool. With that, I will say to everybody watching, thank you for watching. If you're listening to the podcast and Pete has actually posted it, which he probably hasn't, thank you for listening, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
You have no idea, you have some idea how grateful I was that you actually I haven't done it yet, but I have to go watch like the first part of season 3 of Attack on Titan because your defense of Kenny was
Yes.
that's not how I saw him at all, but damn, I can't argue it, so now I have to see it, I have to watch it again. Which brings me to a question, actually. Like, when it comes to like TV, are you the kind of person who can multitask, or do you have to like stop?
No.
So we're say, yeah, I was gonna say your attention to detail is next level, so that's why you're able to do that. Yeah, same.
Nope. No, I have ADHD, so if I'm focusing on something, I have to be focused. Like if I'm working, I can't have music in the background. I can't have anything in the background. It has to be just that thing in front of me going on, or otherwise I lose control. I'll try to, if something, doesn't pique my interest, I'll be on my phone and just be,
Same.
Typical zombie, but I am not listening or seeing anything that is actually happening on screen while I'm doing that. So, but that's why I loved Attack on Titans, because it just sucked me in, and I loved the 20-minute episode, so it was super short, super intense, and it was easy to get sucked in on. So I was all in, and I was just focused on that show while I was watching it. There was no phone. I did fall asleep a few times, but not because I wasn't interested, but because, again, y'all do this late, and I had to pump myself up to just be awake at this hour. Sometimes I just get tired, but other than that, like, I did not lose focus because I was bored. It was just tired. So that show was, boy, I understand why it's one of your favorites. It was
That is
good.
Mozart and Beethoven to these audio receptors. My God.
Well, it's when I started watching, I think I watched 2 seasons in like 4 days or something like that. I blew through it at first because number one, I was fortunate enough to not be really busy working, so I have to multitask, but I've got a TV right here, so when I'm not in meetings and I'm just doing grunt work, it was pretty easy to have it on and catch 90% of it. I could stand to watch it again, number one, because I enjoyed it, but number two, just to catch the things that I missed.
And there's so much to miss. That was such good storytelling. There's always, just the certain character developments that you might not have noticed the first time. It's just so multifaceted storytelling. So it's real good. And it started off hot. I think that's because usually when I start a new show, I always expect the first season to be a little on the slow side, right? Just because they're establishing character, they're building a world, you got to do individual storytelling and then overarching storytelling, especially when you're creating something like Attack on Titans, which was just, it wasn't a real world. So you have to build that entire culture in the first place too. So normally I expect first seasons to just be story building, but they just started in so hot. And I had never seen anime before, and I was not prepared for the level of violence that show brought with it. I was not expecting the gore and blood and just mayhem that came with that show. So even though it was macabre, it was also another aspect that just sucked me in, was just the pure violence of it all.
Wow. I love it. Okay, a couple of things. So normally when we are also just warming up, like I usually get my drink. And I think this is actually the most like content worthy warm up I've actually ever experienced. I mean, you dropped science just now, so we're gonna have to like throw that in the show itself. But I'm gonna go grab a Dixie cup really quick so I can get my beverage of mostly water. But yeah, 1 second.
Oh,
Talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah.